Hit it again.
Okay, tonight we have one of our guests, Douglas Nobles, who's really running for court from the county court common plea, domestic and relation general court. And I want to welcome you to our community engagement with Burhan Ahmed, which is focused in advocating a lot of social issues, especially youth, and in general issues that are happening in Central Ohio. So welcome, Douglas, this episode 13.
All right, thank you, and thanks for having me on.
And I just want to go with you. Can you talk about who Douglas Nobles is? Since a lot of people trying to figure out to know you more about, who is Douglas Nobles is.
All right. Well, I'm a prosecutor at the Zach Klein's office, the city attorney's office. We do a lot of the misdemeanor cases. I prosecute those, your thefts, your domestic violence, your traffic cases, your drunk driving cases, things like that. I've been a prosecutor for about 4 years. However, I started my legal career as a public defender. So I started as a public defender in the common pleas section, which is the felony section, as a law clerk. I did that for a while. And then after I passed the bar, I was hired on as a muni, public defender. And I did that for about 8 years. As a public defender, I defended people in the same cases I'm prosecuting now. Your thefts and your domestic violences, your assaults, traffic cases, drug cases, things like that. So I handled over 1,000 cases a year for almost 8 years, helped a lot of people. I worked on the specialty courts and dockets as a public defender. And then I decided to switch over about 4 years ago. In between, though, I was staff attorney in domestic relations in juvenile court for Judge Terry Jameson. Staff attorney, I did research and writing. I did all the dissolutions, and I did a heavy focus on the juvenile crime portion of the docket since I had public defender experience. So I'm a father of two boys, 10 and 6. I'm expecting my first girl in about 13 days. And I want to run because I think I have a unique experience of being a public defender, prosecutor, staff attorney, and use my experience to help those that come in front of me if I win.
Yeah. Congratulations for the new baby.
Thank you.
I want to ask you, since a lot of new Americans not familiar with the court legal system process, what domestic relations court exactly does?
Yeah, so domestic relations court is family court, right? So anything that involves the family, divorce, dissolution, custody issues, protection orders if you are married or in a relationship and the person's, being violent, or you want to have a protection order, you come to our court. And juvenile criminal crime. So if you're under the age of 18 and you're juvenile, we have jurisdiction over that. So it touches the entire family, right? So it touches, like what I said, just about everything, good and bad, obviously. So it's a very important court because if you have a family issue, like I said, then you have to come to our court. We have jurisdiction over that.
Wow, that's a powerful court. It's a special
Very
family.
powerful.
Yeah. What type of cases are heard in that court in common plea usually?
So we talk a lot about the juvenile criminal docket, but the really big part of the docket is going to be your divorce, your custody issues, things like that are probably the biggest part of the docket. People who want to get divorced or people who are having issues in the family, custody issues, rights to when you can have the kid. People who aren't married can come to the court and come up with a agreement on rights to as a parent, on when you get to visit your child or who gets to be the custodial parent, things like that. And that's the biggest part of the docket. And as I mentioned before, custody issues. So if you're trying to get custody of your child or another child, it's called emergency custody. And of course, the juvenile criminal docket, which is what we hear a lot about in the news, right? Because we see a lot of issues with the youth. But the biggest part of the docket is actually what I said first, which would be the divorce and custody issues.
We see a lot of news about the youth car theft, things like that. A lot of them, people are focusing on the youth and car theft, things like that. But there's the issues that causing this stuff. especially underrepresented communities of color, basically,
Yep.
when they don't have resources. So how do you really navigate it? Because of, imagine young generation don't have a lot of resources, their free space, and Franklin County is the highest, age, so teenage that lose. And when you look at that, that gap is huge.
Right.
So what did your court have plan of,
So there's a lot of resources that we need to maybe do a better job of letting the public know. So I'm going to do is use my experience as a public defender, right? Because as a public defender, I did the same thing. So when I had a young person, obviously over 18, or a person come through my court and they're here for stealing from Kroger, I want to ask why, right? So what's the reason why you're doing that? Is it drug or alcohol? Is it mental health? Or is it just because you can't afford food? So how can we connect you to resources? So the same thought would apply to a 12 or 13 or 14-year-old who's stealing the Kia, right? Why is that young person, boy or girl, out in the street stealing Kias, right? Is it because of mental health, drug addiction? Or could be as simple as, I've talked to a parent this week. She had an 11-year-old son and a 14-year-old son, and she worked night shift as a nurse, and she didn't have childcare. So when she went to work at night, the 14, 11-year-old brothers would go out and have fun. And unfortunately, that fun meant getting in the car with a bunch of other boys who were stealing them, right? So how can we figure out for that mother, how can we connect her to resources for childcare? Or it could be a young boy whose mother or father has some mental health issues. And there are programs in the court to kind of divert them from that, or connect them to resources. So that's how we can help stop this cycle, is trying to figure out why they're in front of us.
Yeah, thank you for clearing, because we see a lot of time news targeting minority children for labeling car thefts and doing that stuff, but there is a social economic gap,
Yes.
that impacting family. You just said nurse that needs childcare, but another thing is, I want to going back to that question, mental health issues also we see a huge impact by people of diverse immigrants and people of color highly. But in a court system, are you able to give opportunity for the youth to get resource help rather than incarcerating, keeping them detention places?
Yeah, there's like roughly 8 programs in the court that try to help divert youth, right? And they connect them to resources, mental health resources, drug and alcohol resources. And I know as a public defender, I spent a lot of time with this. They're called specialty dockets, right? So a specialty docket in the court I'm currently in would be, hey, look, this person has mental health issues. We've screened them. How can we connect them to resources? And how can we link that person to the help they need, right? So rather than just throw them in jail, let's figure out why they're here and get them the resources, right? And get them connected to the right person. So the same thing works in the court I'm running for. And I know Judge Brown has done a big job on that, and other judges in that court, of trying to connect people to resources, including parents, so we can get them connected to mental health. Because unfortunately, mental health is a big issue. And a lot of people, I've noticed there's a lot of Black and brown people don't want to go get the help because it's not something that always talked about in our community. But I'm seeing over my career, we're getting more and more people open to that help because they want to get the help. So I think, yes, there are a lot of resources to do that. We just got to get more of the public to know about the resources.
Yeah. Another thing is also, I'm trying to figure out convention, there's organizations that there's a lot of youth engagement, but they don't have resources,
Right.
That becomes a problem, because if all the organizations don't have a lot of resources, probably they will impact doing the kids, empty, they were doing wrong stuff, and
Right.
Especially when you're surrounded by neighborhoods that don't have a lot of resources, as a court, are you, as a judge, if you've been elected, are you willing to advocate youth intervention, youth access for help or resources in terms of
Yeah, of course. And I know, like I said, there are quite a few programs currently being run in the court that do this. So I would like to see the court be a little more vocal with the community, right? So to say, look, these are the resources we have. So if your child's in the system, so parents can be aware. So when the child, maybe comes to the court, they can be a partner with the court to help us figure out, hey, is this the thing that's best for the child, right? So there are a lot of resources in the court. I just don't know if the public knows about the resources. So we have to do a better job as the court to let everybody know and have conversations like this with certain communities, let them know, hey, look, this is what's available. This is what we're trying to do, right? And I think that's probably the best thing we can do is have an open conversation and be available, right? So I think another thing too, as a judge, you have to be available and try to be part of the community so you can kind of let people know what's in the court. And I think our court's different than Common Pleas General Division because we're still talking about young children. So we're still talking about, of course, there should be consequences. Of course, it's going to be about victims' rights, and public safety is always a top concern. But on the other end of it too, we got to make sure we help the children, because if we don't, all we're doing is kicking the can down the road and becoming a bigger problem when they become 19 and 20, right? So we have to kind of try as hard as we can to a certain degree to figure out why they're here. So I think the ultimate goal is to let the community know what we have as resources and have a dialogue. Yes.
And another thing is in terms of the term limit for the judge, is that 6 years?
Yeah, 6 years. The court I'm running for, the person who's currently the judge was appointed, so it's an unexpired term, which means I have to run again in 2 years, in 24. But if I win this election and in 24, it'll be 6 years from 24 to 30. So
okay, and then also the type of cases claimed up to what in terms of dollar sign. I know every court has a dollar limitation.
So in this court, there is no like civil judgment stuff. So there wouldn't be like a dollar amount, because in the current court, I'm in, it's like $5,000 for damages and stuff like that. There are programs in our court that help victims get restitution back if they commit a crime and they do damage. There is a process to get some for the victim to get some money back, but there is no civil judgment limit, things like that. It's a different court because it deals with juveniles. Now with divorces and stuff, that's a different thing, but we're not under the same limit like Muni has, or you know what I'm saying? So it's a little different.
I see the court. I'm glad some programs, I see some from the county nowadays. I see they kind of like able to bring us close to community now to give more resources. Right. I know everybody cannot afford a hired attorney or navigating in the system,
Right.
And but I'm glad I see there are some programs now that they're coming up and trying to help the community navigate some stuff, which is really is a great experience. But Douglas, what do you want to, if people are watching you today, especially from the county, especially minority immigrants communities will link with, as most of them, what you're going to tell about yourself, because a lot of times they can relate it on your costs because of you understand a lot of our families where they're coming from, the short, and navigating the system, is a genetic system that try to navigate. It's not easy.
No, it's not. It's not easy. Very complicated system, even for lawyers, and especially the court I'm running for, very complicated. But I think for me though, as a public defender, and I still tell people I'm still a public defender at heart. I've learned over my years helping thousands of people that most of the time people are in the situation they're in is because of lack of resources and how to get them those resources. And a vast majority of the time is mental health or drug addiction, right? So for me, I think my experience is that. And my own personal experience, I think will be very helpful. Hopefully, I'm a fair, consistent judge, and also empathy, right? It's important to understand, especially in the court I am, that you got to have some empathy, right? Got to have consequences, got to protect the public, and you have to have the victims in mind for every case. But these are still children, so we have to make sure we get to the root of the problem. So I think that's what makes me a little different is my prior experience, right? And also, if I win this seat, I'll be the first African-American male, Black or brown, to be in this court, right? So I think that perspective could help. And I'm raising 2 boys too, right? So that gives me another perspective.
A lot of time what happened is, myself, I have a young guy who's 18, is calling now. I'm worried about it every day. He's a Black young guy. Perspective you always have is, what's going to happen? You train them, you do them. But always you have bias, out there, judgment, putting people quotations, who they are, what they are. But, I'm glad you really touched a point where you're really open to trying to help them navigate people being, humble as much as, trying to be human. Because it's not easy when you're dealing population that has traumatized different levels, and don't have resources, don't hire attorneys, don't have how to navigate the system. This thing's prevented early stage, but I really want to ask you one more question, which is, if you elected on November 8th, you will be coming back to the community to be able show, because sometimes what happens, a lot of people, they disappear.
I totally agree. And the thing, some of the things I tell people that I want to do is I want to be a public servant, right? Because if you're elected by the voters, you are a public servant, right? Your job is to serve the public. So I don't want to be the judge, and I'm not going to name names, but I've seen some that get elected and they disappear. But you know what? I've learned over the last few years watching some judges that helped me out. They're always in the community, like Judge Munson. She's always out in the community. Judge Mike McAllister is always out in the community. So I'm going to follow their approach to be out as much as I can, because ultimately I work for the voters. I'm a public servant, so I'm not going to just disappear, right? I want to make sure I have connections and people can feel like I'm available or feel like the court's available when they have questions, because we're ultimately public servants. So yes, I'll make a commitment to be out as much as I can.
Thank you. That's going to be our final wrap up. Many of you know election started October 12th. Please vote and make sure you're engaged. Make sure you really help Douglas, brother. You see, he's really passionate, cares about some of the issues that a lot of young Black facing today in general in the state. And we really appreciate for Douglas for your commitment for standing up and showing up, because when you come to court, you need to see somebody who look like you first, because that's scary when you're coming in. You don't have fear, all that type of anxiety is coming in, but in the meantime, focus. Please help brother Douglas Nobles, who's running for the county municipal court. He deserves your vote, and please be considering him, and he's the best. We see him. He's somebody who really can mentor a lot of young Blacks, become his attorneys and help them navigate it in the system. Douglas Noble, we appreciate for you coming up for our platform for communication with Burhan. We appreciate you, and we'll see you on coming up candidate nights on coming up soon on a Thursday night. So
can I say one more thing too?
Go ahead.
So on the ballot, there's a lot of issues on the ballot. Judges are towards the bottom. Make sure you finish the ballot. A lot of people sometimes go in, they vote for the big races. Please go all the way through, finish the ballot. All right. There's 9 judges races. There's a bunch of other stuff. So finish, go all the way through. Yep.
It's very important that you really focus on judges. That judges impact every single day our communities, our families, our neighbors, and it's a very important election this year, 2022. And the judge from the county is the most important thing that impact each and every day for all of us. So please consider the judge. Look at the judges down, pile it down. Look at the judge. All their names there, and also brother Douglas and all the other candidates. Is out there also, but give it to him. Please, you vote, you support. He deserved. He's somebody who actually navigated multiple front issues, especially Black young people of color, and diverse immigrants, and everybody. So please consider him and vote for him, please. And thank you, Douglas.
Thank you
for your commitment and your congratulations for your new baby. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.